as always, I'm going to want to make sure before I try the practice problems I've watched the lecture, solved those numerical problems in the lecture from scratch, and I have handy the lecture handout or the concepts, definitions, formulas handout. Today I've got with me the lecture handout, which should be fine. All right, so let's jump into what I've got for us today. This is very similar to in-class quiz problem for the first part of handout 15. Corresponds to lecture 15, part A, and it's all about weighted average cost of capital. So we've got some information for ValueCo. We've got 2 years worth of balance sheets, and we've got some information here saying the firm's equity market value is estimated to be the same as, or at least similar to, its GAAP value. And we've got an income statement only for 20x1. That's all we're going to need. And we're also told that somebody for us has worked on a CAPM model, opportunity investment model, or some other model to estimate the company's equity cost of capital at 15%. And then we're asked to find, ultimately, the big deal that we're asked to find here is the weighted average cost of capital. But to make sure we know who's who and what's what along the way, we're going to calculate all the inputs for the weighted average cost of capital, except for the equity cost of capital, which we've already learned how to estimate using CAPM and talked about other things in a previous chapter. So let's go ahead and find these things. So RD is going to be the pre-tax cost of debt capital, and let's put pre-tax in there just to be clear. Heads up, there might not be pre-tax on the in-class assignment and the homework if I've got them laid out exactly like this, but it's assumed to be pre-tax if we don't say post-tax. Okay, so RD, all we've got here, how can we get RD? We learned a few methods for getting RD in a previous chapter, but all we have here are the financial statements. So we're going to take the interest and divide that by the total debt BOP, right? So that's going to be equal to, I want my interest in the latest year, unless we're told otherwise. We always assume we want stuff for the latest year, and up here it's clarified for us. We want 20x1, okay? And now for the beginning of period debt, right? Beginning of period 20x1 is end of period 20x2. Balance sheets are always done as of the end of the period, so here's where I want to be taking my debt from, because this is going to be the beginning of year debt for 20x1. All right, so let's look around. It's going to be in liabilities somewhere. All right, so I got some debt here, but watch it. I might have more debt. Okay, there's some bonds maturing in 2000x5. That's clearly debt too. So I got to add these up. It does not matter if it's short term or long term or what, as long as it's some interest bearing liability, we're going to count it. Okay, so I want both of those, and I think that I've got it there. We have 6.25%. And I think in the homework and the in-class questions, you're asked to do these calculations to 4 decimal places, and then finally the weighted average capital, cost of capital to 3 decimal places, because that's going to involve the use of all these numbers. All right, so the tax rate, we know the tax rate is just going to be our tax over our EBT, or for the accounting police among us, it's going to be our taxable income. But in this class, we pretty much assume that the accounting is very simple and earnings before tax on the GAAP income statement is equal to taxable income on the tax return. So for us, it's pretty much just going to be tax divided by earnings before tax. Okay, so let's go down, and we have the financial statement. So we're sort of doing this from the perspective of an analyst working for Warren Buffett or a hedge fund or an investment bank or a private equity firm, all with all the information that we have is the publicly provided information. Okay, so let's get our tax here. So that's 10. And what is our earnings before tax? Let's see what we've got here. Oops, we do not have a subtotal for earnings before tax here, so I'm going to have to create it. I know in accounting, they have taught a lot of you to get these subtotals working from the bottom. Somehow when I do that, I always make a mistake and get it wrong, so I always just go from the top. Okay, so what's earnings before tax going to be? Let me just make sure I'm back in here. So that's going to be my revenue minus my COGS minus my interest, and that's it. There's nothing else before tax. Then we just have tax and net income. So that's going to be my earnings before tax there. And I get 33%, 33.33%. And we could say here, let's do that, just to make everything look consistent and be similar to what you'd want to do for the homework. I see. Okay, so that's not so nice of Excel. Okay, and that's a little better. Okay, all right, so that's our tax rate. And now we need the weight of the debt. In our weighted average cost of capital, we need the weight of the debt and the weight of the equity. Okay, and the weight of the debt is going to be total debt over total D plus E. Okay, and for this, we always want to take this from the latest balance sheet. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So now I don't want 20x0 anymore. Okay, I want 20x1. So I'm going to say equal. I know I got two things to add up. So at end of year 2000 X1, they had 20 in short-term debt, and they had not repurchased any of those bonds. They're not due till 20x5, so that stayed the same. So now we want in the denominator the debt, total debt. And we want to add to that the equity. And we can use the GAAP value of the equity A because it's all that we have, and B because in this case the market value of equity is similar to the GAAP value. Okay, and so we get 82.35% there. Okay, and WE we could calculate in a similar way here, but as you know, I'm very lazy, so the laziest way to do this is to say that this is equal to 1 minus WD. So let's just do that, equal, because the two of them have to add up to 100%. Whoops, I want 1 minus that guy. Okay, and that's 17.65%. And now we're ready to compute, at long last, our weighted average cost of capital. Okay. So as always, if we don't know what something is or where to get it or what its formula is or something like that, what we want to do is jump back either to our concepts, definitions, and formulas handout or just the original handout itself. And in this case, let's say we completely forgot what the weighted average cost of capital is. So we just go to one of those two handouts and look it up, and let's see what we've got here. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So here's where it's introduced, and here's where we've got the complete definition here and all the information we need to know about the weighted average cost of capital. So here it is, 1 minus the tax rate times RD times WD plus RE times WE, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we could look things up if we didn't remember what the weighted average cost of capital was. Okay, and that's going to be equal to we want 1 minus the tax rate, which I'll abbreviate as TR, times the cost of debt capital times the weight of the debt that the firm has, and then plus, this is a lot simpler on the equity side, just the cost of their equity capital times the weight of their equity. And that's it. And now we have everything up above here that we need to compute this, except for we don't have cost of equity capital, but it's down here. Someone's done it for us. They did it from CAPM, Opportunity Investment Model, or something else, and it's 15%. So we'll plug that in where we need to. Okay, so let's say here 1 minus, here's our tax rate, 33%, okay, times, we want to multiply that times our pre-tax cost of debt capital, okay? And I'll say something about that, a little more about that in a second. And we want our weight of debt, multiply it by that to get the proper weighting. And now we come over to the equity side, and we'll pick off our equity cost of debt capital, and we want the weight of the equity, and there we go. And I think we got it there. So they have about 6.1% weighted average cost of capital here. So that's the story for them. And the other thing that I did want to say here is you don't want to go to post-tax cost of debt capital twice. So up here you see we're using pre-tax cost of debt capital, and then when we multiply that by 1 minus the tax rate down below, as we've already learned in a previous chapter, that gets us to our post-tax cost of debt capital. And that matches what we have here for equity cost of capital, which comes out of CAPM as a post-tax cost of capital, CAPM or the opportunity investment model, either one. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, as always, for your time and attention, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.